Welcome back. Nearly a dozen Trump allies were arraigned today in Arizona on charges related to their alleged involvement in a plan to overturn the state's 2020 election results. They all pled not guilty. Those arraigned today include Rudy Giuliani, who was actually served his summons in dramatic fashion outside of his 80th birthday party in Florida after eluding process servers for weeks. On Friday, Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays announced that Giuliani had been served a notice of his indictment. Just over an hour after, Giuliani taunted the AG for failing to find him in a now deleted social media post. 18 people were indicted last month in connection with a plan to falsify the certification of that, or falsely, I should say, certify that Trump won in 2020. And former President Trump was named as an unindicted co-conspirator. Mr. Trump himself faces criminal charges in 2 other election interference cases. But despite those charges, he continues to repeat lies that he won the 2020 election and cast doubt about the results of this coming November. Joining me now to talk about this is the Washington Post's Yvonne Sanchez, who's covering voting issues in Arizona, and Brahm, who's the political reporter and anchor for our NBC affiliate in Phoenix. Thank you guys both for being here. So, Yvonne, 11 defendants arraigned today. When can we expect the rest of the arraignments, and how quickly could this case move forward?
Several of the defendants are going to appear early next month. Some of these things will probably stretch into sometime mid-June. I would not expect this case to wrap up anytime soon. It's probably going to stretch on for a number of years. What was really interesting about today was the schedule that the commissioner laid out for all of the defendants. It is lining up right along with that election schedule and is definitely going to keep this elector case front and center of, the electorate psyche ahead of this expected rematch between Trump and Biden.
And we mentioned Giuliani's summons this weekend. That impacted his release conditions. What did the judge rule?
Yeah, so Giuliani was the only defendant that state prosecutors sought conditions for. They wanted $10,000 cash bond. The judge issued basically an assurance bond. He will have to go through a bail bondsman, find some other form to basically ensure that he is going to appear before the court. He also must appear within the next 30 days in Maricopa County for his booking procedures. And obviously this follows this odyssey that we've tracked over the last 3 weeks, where state prosecutors tried time and again through multiple phone calls, visits to his New York apartment, matching, a real estate listing for his apartment with the background that is featured in his social media posts, repeated attempts to try to get him, finally catching up with him late on Friday at his 80th birthday party.
Well, he was live streaming that birthday party, we should point out. Yvonne, among those indicted in this case are current Arizona lawmakers. So give us a sense of what's going on in the state Republican Party there. And what does it mean for state house politics at a time when state lawmakers have been garnering more national attention?
Look, this is an issue that we've been dealing with nonstop for the past 3.5, 4 years. I feel like the rest of the country is just sort of catching up to sort of the denialism and the skepticism towards the 2020 outcome that has really sort of ripped and only deepened in Arizona over the last several years. I don't think this really changes anything at the state house, other than perhaps giving and elevating a platform now, a courtroom platform, cameras, reporters showing up to all of these events, for some of these people to state their case in a sort of reasoned fashion. I do think that there will be a continued, perhaps more to be learned sort of conversation around the knowledge of some of the electors who will tell you that they just did what they were told. They were hearing from really important people from the national level, from attorneys who seemed to know what they were doing, from the leader of their own party who was summoning them down there and telling them what to do. And there seems to be sort of a disconnect between what those people might have known and what the middlemen nationally and here in Arizona.
Okay, Yvonne, thanks for that. I know you're on deadline, so let's move over and talk to Brahm about it from his perspective. Brahm, the indictment includes many Trump allies. The former president himself is an unindicted co-conspirator. What does this tell us about Trump's influence over the Arizona Republican Party?
Well, if you see the elections playing out today, the primaries, for example, red district on the west side of Maricopa County, Donald Trump has endorsed one candidate there, and that endorsement likely counts for a lot, although we'll have to see how that shakes out, because the candidate he endorsed right now is in second in polling in that district against the guy Donald Trump endorsed in the last cycle, Blake Masters versus Abe Hamadeh. But it still seems Trump has a hold on the party. We are seeing some fractures here and there in local districts. Certainly Democrats think they can crack some of those districts and take control of the state legislature for the first time in about half a century. So there are some fractures showing in specific places. We'll have to see how that plays out.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder, are voters paying attention to this case? Are they concerned about the fake electors? And is it resonating with them? Or is this not one of the top issues that voters are taking with them when they go to vote?
Well, if you see what voters rank as their top issues, democracy for Democrats is quite high. Does the fake electors story fit into that? Perhaps. I have to keep reminding myself as a journalist that all this happened 3.5 years ago, and keep reminding myself to tell folks, here's what happened and what they're accused of doing, because in this environment, the news flies by so quick. To many, it is very important, and I think as more information comes out, information that was reported 2 years ago or so, they might get more engaged. And, I'd add about Rudy Giuliani in particular, what happened today is significant, because if you look at the emails that have been released, if the voice messages we have, it is clear Rudy Giuliani played a central role in bringing the scheme together, and at one point, according to the emails, even holding it together, when Kelly Ward, the former chair of the Arizona Republican Party, thought for a moment that she might be committing treason. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's in one of the emails, and that's likely to come up again as we get to trial. I would agree with Yvonne that the trial is a long way away. Yeah.
So, Brahm, there's a new poll of Arizona voters that shows nearly half of Republican voters believe the election results should be challenged and investigated if President Biden wins. This is the upcoming election, not the one that already happened. Are officials in Arizona prepared for a similar scheme to unfold in 2024? Are they hoping that maybe this indictment serves as a deterrent?
The answer to that question is no. They are not hoping this indictment serves as a deterrent. They think it's an important step to take to hold people accountable. At the same time, they are preparing for much of what we saw in 2020, for the possibility that could happen again. Challenges to the elections. You saw what that poll says. That's half the Republican electorate, if you believe the poll, but it doesn't have to even be that much. We do know our top elections officials are preparing for challenges, and maybe even worse as the results come out on election night.
All right, Brahm, excellent perspective. I appreciate you so much for being on. Thanks for that.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.